Well, welcome back, everyone. I don't know where everyone is. They must be all trying to find coffee or taking a nap after that keynote, but nevertheless, we're going to get started. Before I announce our presenter, just a reminder, our welcome reception is tonight immediately following this at 5 o'clock at the Expo Hall. So this is your chance. It's an opportunity to eat and drink, so there's free food and drink there as well as visiting the exhibitors. So please plan on enjoying some time, at our Expo Hall. All right, so our fourth and last speaker of today is Victor Ronan. So Victor, come on up.
Hey everyone, first of all, thank you for joining, and secondly, I know, to be honest, a little bit hard act to follow just after keynotes and kind of violin, so probably I should invite a violinist here to make it a little bit more entertainment, but still, let's talk about workload identity. And first of all, my name is Victor Ronin. I'm a software architect in a company called Ambit, and as I mentioned, we work about workload identity today. Before we dive into the session itself, just 2-minute introduction about me. So I was doing software research and development in identity and security for the last 20 years. Probably you're wondering what the hell our Palm devices are doing here. So that's where I started my security journey a long time ago, putting passwords and encryption on these bad boys. Now it's all gone, but still cool stuff. I'm a technology generalist, did a bunch of things, mobile development, desktop, embedded, all kind of things. And my current position, as I mentioned, it's Ambit. We are doing workload IAM. In the past, I was with Okta, which is user IAM, and specifically I was on the mobile side of the things. Also, I was in Netscope doing SASE, and specifically there was a tiny startup which was acquired, which became a Netscope private access product, but Netscope doing SASE and CASB and so on. For a little bit, I was in Pulse, which is legacy VPN vendor on the cloud initiative, and there was just a bunch of other smaller companies in mobile security, enterprise mobility management, rights management, everything around security and identity. So what this session is about? Pretty much I will talk to you about workload IAM, actually about workload identity and about workload IAM. And specifically, I will start with just mental model, how I think about it. Next, there will be a brief history how all these things happen together, and we will talk about current issues around workloads, talking to workloads, and access, and so on. And just what led to the emergence of this workload identity challenges and workload IAM. Finally, there will be some recommendations. And also, I will try to look at the crystal ball and predict what will happen in 7 to 10 years in this space. So with it in mind, let's dive in. So this just quite simplistic stack is my mental model of what workload identity and IAM is about. Access, authentication, identity. Let's start from the top. To be honest, us security practitioners, if we had a magic wand, we would say, I want only trusted applications from the left, access trusted applications from on the right. That's it. I don't care about all these authentication algorithms, identity, challenges, passwords, hashes, certificate. We want only trusted things, talk to trusted things. There is one problem. We don't have a magic wand. And as a result, we have to go down in these layers and to figure out access, we need to figure out authentication. To figure out authentication, we need to figure out identity. There is no way around it. And identity is foundational for all of these things. And by the way, all of us are very familiar with user identity, each time when we go to web and type my username and password, MFA, yes, 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 kind of just we think about it. We are always familiar with workload identity, and as a result, kind of it's something new to me, and I believe kind of it's something new to a lot of people. In this talk, I will heavily concentrate on what I call a client workload identity, things on the left, which are trying to access something. However, in a couple of places, I will also talk a little bit about things on the right, some services which are being accessed. Also, if you look at this stack, what you realize, like, hey, my user IAM just fits perfectly in this picture. And that's correct. Just mental model are very similar. That being said, the destination of both user and IAM and workload IAM is the same. The journey is very different. Underlying technologies are different, challenges are different. As a result, it's interesting to see some parallels, but also it's interesting to see some differences in how it all looks and feels. And finally, just to mention, like, there is analytics, there is a governance, which just cross-cutting concerns, which are applicable to all these three layers. And in keynote, they were talking about, like, okay, we need visibility, we need to understand what's going on. That's exactly what it is. We need visibility into workloads, who talks to whom, when, how, in which cases, in which conditions. And probably the last thing, just the name of the talk is workload identity, but again, I already said multiple times, workload IAM, they come hand in hand. Pretty much yes, you solve workload identity, but you need to solve more than that. You need to solve workload identity and authentication and access to. And with that in mind, let's move to the next slide. Let's have a little bit of definitions. At least maybe not just super precise vocabulary definitions, but at least that all of us are on the same page. First of all, what workload is. In the past, you had a backend, one monolithic application accessing database. Ta-da! That's the whole picture. Right now, everything becomes more complicated. You have microservices, you have some serverless things running on the side, and so on. So customers, as a result, just having the very having a very precise definition is hard. Workload become a flexible boundary. Pretty much, each customer draw it for themselves. Somebody will draw it around just a process. Somebody will draw it around component. Somebody draw it around a service. Somebody will say, hey, just, how my data center is a client workload, it's okay for this data center to access another data center, nothing else. As a result, you have this flexible boundary which customer can define. Plus, obviously, you have a need for access control around this flexible boundary. And that's just what workload is. Again, not vocabulary definition, but just at least that's how I think about it. Next, switching to workload identity. And that's a little bit more tricky. Again, this username identity, we know what it is. Just you have user identifier, like username, email, user ID, which are familiar to us. You have things which can authenticate and identify user, like passwords, certificates, key pairs, cookies, and so on. And just to draw the parallel, for workload, you have workload identifiers. As example, you can have a Kubernetes pod ID. Here's your workload. Or maybe if you just draw a boundary around your virtual machine, now you have a virtual machine ID. And sometimes things, by the way, sometimes things doesn't just fit perfectly, but that's approximately how it is. And the same thing on the right side, you have things which can identify and authenticate it, which could be certificates, key pairs, tokens, and so on. And finally, workload IAM. You can pretty much when you think about workload IAM, you can think about it's like, oh, that's user IAM for workloads. It's integrated solution, which includes just multiple components inside of it. It's workload directory. It could be a vault for your password. It's a system to solve workload identity, authentication, access, visibility, and so on. So pretty much it's integrated solution. That's how approximately what it is. And now let's go into a history and what happened in the last 20, 30, 40 years. Here's a timeline. And this is simplification, because I'm pretty sure that kind of everybody here are smart people and know way more than me. So as a result, somebody will say, oh, it says no authentication, but I knew that in 1946, somebody on the Mark I created authentication between workloads. And I will say, yes, unfortunately, even my father wasn't born in this year, but that's a different subject. So as a result, it is simplification. There are some industries and some niches within industries which are a little bit further along. There are some industries which are lagging and so on. So pretty much workloads talk to workloads for a long time. And initially there was no authentication. Like they sit on the same network, they can talk. By the way, even right now, just who have Redis in the environment, in memory database? Who authenticates access to it? Some people, but if you just ask, actually, 70% of people do not authenticate connections to Redis, which is craziness. Any database will be authenticated, Redis, nobody cares. So after some period of time, some custom authentication started to come along. People were just started to build some authentication. By the way, by now, a lot of this initial custom stuff became a de facto standard. As example, it's interesting that in 2009, Windows started to separate user identity from service identity. So they introduced this Windows service accounts. And that shows just, literally it was just 15 years ago, and only at that moment it's like, oh, there is something beyond users. There are some just different entities. In 2010s, what we see that we see standardization of authentication between workloads. As example, OAuth 2 became a standard, and right now it's used through the web. A little bit later, you see secrets management coming along, and the idea is that for workloads, it's like, how do you authenticate? Oh, it's simple. Let me create a secret here, put it in an environment variable on some workload, and now it can use this secret. And when you start having 25 these environment variables with secrets, somebody like, that's craziness. Let's put everything in the vault. Let's give to this application a key to the vault. Now it's all good. Finally, when we are coming in 2020s, we start seeing the secrets managers started to integrate deeply with the platform and just have more legs to it. And also what we see in a couple of last years, you start having a lot of startups which start to concentrate on this workload identity problem. And as example, you can see Google Workload Identity Federation. So not only startups, but different companies started to grapple with this problem. Interesting, one more interesting notion that it's all just workload identity is lagging behind user identity for about 1.5 decades. So as I mentioned, I was in Okta, and Okta was founded in 2009. And right now we're in 2023, and we are just seeing workload identity startups. So as a result, we are right now in this workload identity management era. And the question is, why now? Why not 2 years ago or 2 years from now? What happened within the last 20 years is just picture from the left became picture from the right. Picture on the left, before, monolithic application, accessing database, that's it. Picture on the right, oh yes, we have microservices which are accessing SaaS API, SaaS platform, serverless database, in-memory database in another cloud. Oh, we have a couple of clouds, and we have a little bit on-prem. We are talking, as example, we are talking to a customer which and they're like, oh yeah, we have 70,000 servers, like AWS, yes, Azure, yes, cloud, yes, on-prem, yes, all, literally, you name it and they have it. And as a result, and they need to operate in this, amount of integration skyrocketed, everything became ephemeral, everything moves, amount of secrets flying around is horrendous. And as a result, you need to deal with all of that. And that's the reason why we're in this workload identity era, because it just became, the old tools doesn't work anymore. That's the problem. And by the way, switching to the challenges, that's a perfect segue. There are a lot of challenges just about what is happening now with all of this proliferation of this highly dynamic environment and complexities and integrations. First of all, practices are outdated. And you can see duct tape because pretty much kind of companies are using this duct tape to keep things together. As example, we saw a company which kind of have a manual spreadsheet with all the software which they run. And it's like when something moves from one server to another, somebody goes and updates it. Like, yep, 21st century. You can feel it. And people copy-paste secrets and send them over Slack, email. Again, you don't have to name your company, just show of hand. Who has ever copy-pasted secret and sent it by email or Slack? I did. Yeah, people are scared. I'm pretty sure that everybody did on this auditory. Even kind of the most security conscious kind of, it's like, you need to share it somehow. There are a lot of long-term secrets, which is also a problem. Secrets are not rotated. Secrets are not tracked. So, and by the way, kind of right now, if you just listen to that, it's like, oh, he's proposing to use votes. A little bit. But even votes doesn't solve everything, and I will talk about that. Second problem is fragmentation. First of all, kind of just, there are some platform IAM which helps you. As example, if in AWS, their IAM is great. You just can configure everything, it all works fine. But now you're in Azure too, and Azure doesn't understand AWS, and AWS doesn't understand Azure. And oh, by the way, again, you run something on-prem which doesn't understand anything and live in 20th century. Also, there are a bunch of cool tools. To be honest, don't take me wrong. These tools are awesome. You have service meshes, you have Spiffy and Spire, you have Secrets Manager, you name it. The only problem is that all of them are very narrow. And we security practitioners end up in a place like, oh yeah, you need to integrate 25 different things and just tie them together and pray that nothing will upgrade and will break everything. By the way, there was a speaker here which was talking about that, just when you have 54 different things you upgrade, need to manually update the rule sets. Great stuff. Finally, as I mentioned, there is overall lag. We are still not thinking clearly about workload identity, because with user identity, we had a 15 years in. With workload identity, it's something new, so as a result, we are still trying to apply old thinking to a new problem. And as example, workload identified by IP addresses. It's very common to have a whitelist or say, here's the IP address, and I know that that's my server running something. What do you do in Kubernetes? What do you do in the cloud when they move around, IPs are generated? It doesn't work anymore. So pretty much in the big questions, how do you manage workload access securely and at scale? I was demanded by just my marketing department to include this slide. They're like, you're going to MYs, they're talking about threats, you need to talk about threats. So I'm talking about threats. Obviously, all of these bad practices are and outdated practice and outdated thinking leads to different threats. The biggest one, by the way, which was mentioned in keynotes, it's like, if you have keys, they will be lost, they will be leaked, there will be horizontal attacks, they will get to more of your stuff. There are a bunch of things which when people configure workload to workload communication, there is weak identification, IP addresses, there is lack of curation. Like, I remember I worked in a company, a little bit underrated story, but they had a Wi-Fi password. They had the same Wi-Fi password for 14 years, including hundreds of people who left and knew it. Good stuff. So, and pretty much by the way, here I have a link which we try to track big, well-known breaches related to credentials, related to workload access, and so on. The list is long and scary. It's like, oh yeah, these guys hacked, data exposed, millions paid in ransomware, and so on. Good stuff. So, and workload IAM is a solution. And in next slide, I will talk about wide solution. First of all, again, going back to what workload IAM, it's an integrated solution which try to peel away and solve all layers of this problem. It tries to solve identity, and authentication and access. So starting from the bottom, kind of last time I started from the top because kind of access is our kind of just what we want to get. But here I'm starting from the bottom because identity is foundational here. And pretty much kind of what we see in kind of what we see in the market, how companies try to solve this problem. It's interesting that kind of we are right now in the midst of it. So I cannot tell you like, this is the way, because kind of you can tell it for like user IAM, where we are already 15 years in. You can tell it probably for SASE, where we are kind of like 7, 8 years in. For workload IAM, it's like, that's our best bets. We will see in 5 years, but right now, this looks like a right trends. So the trends which we see, it's a lot of workload identity try to use platform identity, because it's really hard to start something from nothing, and platform identity is there to help you. Second, it's getting people out of the loop. Again, it's as soon as you have somebody creating a secret and provisioning it to workload, there is a person involved, and oh, this person copied the secret, put it Evernote, beep, synced in the cloud, sent on Slack, beep, in the Slack, and after somebody copied it from the Slack and put in the kind of right place, you have a lot of people touching it, you have a lot of system touching it. There is tons of places where you can kind of just lose this stuff. Kind of going a little bit up in the stack to authentication. And by the way, kind of here I'm talking about client workload authentication. Authentication. Kind of just something on the left, how we figure out like whether it's what it should be. And pretty much kind of right now, two big trends about it. It's workload attestation. And kind of this, I was hearing about workload attestation for last probably 15 years. Nobody knew how to do it. So finally, I believe kind of Spiffy and Spire guys was one of the first guys who said like, here's a way how it will work. I'm not saying that they were always perfect, but they introduced a way and kind of a lot of people started to follow the idea. It's like, oh, that's how you do it. And right now kind of community started to build on top of that and figuring out kind of just a better way. So, and workload attestation is pretty much kind of a concept when you try without having a secret associated with the client workload, figure out what this workload is. And usually you take this platform identity of this workload, plus you add some signals, and as a result, like, oh, we know that this guy has a Kubernetes token, which proves that it has this pod, plus we know that it runs in the trusted cluster, and plus we know that it runs in trusted AWS account, it's good. And if something doesn't match, then in such case, it's not a correct client workload. So the beauty of this thing is that now you have secretless authentication. Pretty much you don't need this first secret to kind of unlock everything else. And I will talk a little bit more about it on the next slide because that's the core of this presentation. Finally, kind of you have the access layer. And in access layer, to be honest, it's kind of less, there is less novelty in it. Like, you know, we knew how to build access policy for the last 40, 50 years. That being said, kind of, there is a lot of engineering in this. Kind of, you still need to build it right. That being said, kind of, there are a couple of things which we see. Companies try to build something which spans silos. Specifically, again, something which works in it works in Azure, it works for AWS, it works for Salesforce. By the way, kind of, we think only about IaaS providers, but actually there are other platforms like Salesforce, Office 365, and so on. There is a policy as a code. I believe kind of that's what we will have in the future. You know, kind of in the past, everybody used UI to configure policies. After there was an API to configure policies, and gradually it's kind of pushed away by declarative way to kind of define policies as a code. There is kind of the notion of access as a service. This one is a little bit more iffy. Kind of first, on one hand, people don't want to deploy kind of just the whole kind of stack on their own. They want to use something as a service. Again, Okta is a great case. Kind of just you go and use it. On the other hand, I see that from bigger customers there is a pushback. They want to control their own destiny. They want to like, hey, no. Just what if you go down? Just give us the copy and we will operate it. It's a complex balance. On one hand, kind of people want productivity of having everything as a service without a need to kind of just manage it. On the other hand, people want to break glass. If something goes wrong, they want to be able to kind of just go and fix it themselves. Finally, kind of the last thing, which is there is a short-lived access credentials versus long-lived secrets. Again, kind of we're so used to kind of like you created a token, this token lives for a year. If it's lost, first of all, you don't know whether it's lost. But if it's lost, in such case, people can use it for a year. And that needs to go away. Pretty much kind of access credentials to access some service should be very short-lived. Think about it. If it lives for 15 minutes, kind of for software, it's not a problem to create each new one 15 minutes. For a person, if somehow they were able to steal one of them, and they have just window of 15 minutes, it's a damn small window to use. Don't take me wrong. Yes, you can build automation to do it and so on, but now you both need to find your, as example, 0 day, get in, store it, put it in your automation, use it, extract everything in 15 minutes, boom, it's gone. So as a result, that's approximately the trends which we are seeing. I don't know whether all of them pan out, but I'm pretty sure that 70% of them will pan out over, let's say, I don't know, 5-7 years. So we will see. And finally, the core of this talk. So the problem which workload, the most core problem of the workload identity is how do you bootstrap it? How it was done again, what I mentioned in the past, kind of classical way. You generate a secret and say, okay, now my workload A, here is the secret, and now this secret represents workload A. What is the problem with this approach? The problem is this first secret is not protected. You just put it in environment variable. So, and people are like, oh yeah, sure, but we will encrypt it. Great, we encrypt it, now you have encryption key. Where do you put this encryption key? Oh, we will put it in the environment variable, but it's unprotected. How do you protect it? Oh, we can encrypt it too. And now you have the turtles all the way down. And by the way, that's not my metaphor regarding turtles all the way down. It was like forever and ever. Again, Spiff Aspire guys just came up with this metaphor, and they were talking about solving this bottom turtle. If you solve the bottom turtle, everything just click into a place. You can build it on top of it. And there is this modern way, and the modern way is pretty much there are platform identities, and for them it's easier. When they launch new workload, they're like, yep, here's a new workload. Let's generate something, let's put it there. It's not visible to anybody. So as a result, you have this thing and it's there. Unfortunately, not everybody run, I don't run AWS, I wish, but not yet. As a result, for the rest of the companies, pretty much they have to federate with these platform identities. And they have to use this notion. As example, in Kubernetes, it could be a service token, which a platform identity. In AWS, it could be EC2 metadata. In Azure, actually, there is an equivalent of EC2 metadata. In VMware world, you can interrogate, as example, TPM chip, which provides you. So there are a lot of ways to to get something out of the platform. And pretty much the idea that you can get this information about underlying identity from the platform. And you can send it somewhere, and something else can do attestation. That's called workload attestation. Can attest that pretty much what you sent is correct. And instead of using this secret, which you manually created, provisioned, and that, you can just get something trust to workload identity. Pretty much almost out of thin air. Obviously, there is no magic. You're relying on the platform. And without platform, that doesn't work. But that being said, right now, everything, all the modern stuff runs on top of some platform. So it's not like there are stuff still sometimes you run on the bare metal. But even bare metal, it's like TPM. You have TPM in bare metal. So as a result, that's what you do. And that's that's how a lot of companies try to solve this problem, removing the need for this first secret and just giving identity and a way to authenticate the client workload. And as soon as you have that, that's pretty much kind of completely remove a need to kind of store anything secret-wise. Basically, it's interesting that I talked a lot about this platform identity. Potentially, you can do it even without platform identity. But you can collect enough signals when you don't have a strong identity, but you have enough signals for you to say, good enough. As example, maybe you know that it's coming from AWS, your account. And you're like, OK, that's already good. And as example, maybe you know that CrowdStrike running on this machine. And maybe you know that, as example, there is just logs are created and dumped somewhere. And there is intrusion system installed in this VPC. And you have enough of these signals and you say, you know what? Yes, it's not technically cryptographically proven that that's identity. But that's good enough. Again, sometimes you have crown jewels, which you truly, truly want to know that they are. Sometimes you have a Jira running somewhere on the side for some side engineering team, and that may be good enough. You know better than me, in security there are no absolutes. You cannot have a perfect security. So it's always scale, and pretty much just you choose where you want to be on the scale based on just the value of your asset. One more thing, there is IETF guys starts thinking about standards, which is cool, and they're thinking how it all should look like. They're super early in this thought process, so as a result, we will see where it will end. I would truly recommend to just keep an eye on it. Obviously, if it becomes something like OS 2, all of us will adapt it probably overnight. Right now, it's more of like, hey, let's collect use cases. And finally, we come to a place like, that was a lot of talk about hey, here's a workload identity, the core of the problem. And now just on recommendation side. First recommendation side is like workload space has changed. And it's you already saw that applications become distributed, ephemeral, very messy. You have a chance to evolve with that. And by the way, thank you for coming here and just listening to me. Hopefully you will come back and say, OK, yeah, let me tackle some part of this problem. Second, just recommendation what to do today. Start tracking your workloads and secrets. And B, set up periodic rotation of your credentials. By the way, that's just good hygiene rules. So it's like, brushing your teeth. I'm not saying here anything controversial. If you don't brush your teeth, start brushing your teeth. Finally, the last thing is at some moment of our companies will have to choose some solution to deal with this problem. I would recommend to concentrate on a solution which manages and concentrates on access versus secrets. Because keep the eyes on the prize. And specifically, if you choose a solution, probably you want to have a couple of things in your head. Like this solution should be able to span silos. If it's just, we have a great solution for Kubernetes. Not everything runs Kubernetes. Or we have a solution which works well in AWS. What about Azure, GCP, and so on? And you don't want to get in a place where you have a solution which just solves only part of your needs. And now you have to go back to duct tape. B, manage the whole identity stack. Identity, authentication, and access. And to be honest, it's a little bit knock-off against vaults. Because vaults are just super concentrated on just small piece, which is like, OK, let's keep your secrets secure. But they don't solve so many things. Because as soon as they release the secret to client application, that's it. They have no idea whether it was used, not used, stolen, lost, used for access, no idea. Finally, I would really recommend to concentrate on solutions which supports workload attestation. Again, out of all the trends which I laid out, it feels like this has the highest probability of being a stable trend and be here for a long time. And the last thing is predictions. Sometimes I try to read into future too much. And as example, when iPhone 1 came out, and I looked at this guy and they're like, this is a toy. you cannot install application on it, nobody will buy it. I just missed the mark by 4 or 5 billion devices, plus or minus, not much. So be careful with my predictions, they're not always true. That being said, kind of based on the facts, kind of Microsoft did a research. Right now, workload identity outnumber human identity like 10 to 1, and which makes sense. Kind of this, right now, human population grows something like 2-3% a year. Workload identity can double each year, and obviously at some moment they will plateau. I don't know when. Kind of just my AI overlords still didn't tell me, but we will see. And it will become worse and worse. That's I can bet you on this prediction. Second is a little bit more iffy prediction. I think there will be unification between user IAM, workload IAM, PAM, secrets management, and so on, because they start to impede on it. They will start to impede on each other. Basically, when I'm saying that, please don't sit back and say, oh, that's great. I already have user IAM. I will just wait for 7 years until everything will be fine. You can wait, but within these 7 years, a lot of bad stuff can happen. So I would recommend to just start looking a little bit before my prediction comes true. There will be way more visibility across just all the workloads, access, and so on. Right now, there is very little, and it's disconcerting. Again, just with user IAM, you know where it's used and so on. With SASE, you know just who is accessing what. With workloads, it's like, yeah, something is accessing something. It's all good. Finally, I think, I don't know how many of you are engineers, I'm on engineering side, and taking account that I was doing it 20 years, I'm already tired of, I'm not even writing into authentication, thanks God. Just don't allow your engineers write crypto libraries and authentication. But even integrating, each time I'm like, oh, let me authenticate, or auth 2. Okay, here's a client credentials flow. Oh, there is this new thing, Pixie. Should I use it? Should I not? Okay, how I generate keys here? Oh, where do I store secret? There are a lot of things to do. And as a result, I hope and I think that there will be less engineering work involved. It will become part of the platform. So applications on the left will stop implementing it. Applications on the right will stop implementing it. It will be just part of this workload IAM, which will help you to do all, for the rest of the system, concentrate on business needs. And for these things, just, okay, it will do identify and authenticate client workload. It will generate access credentials. It will send it on the right. It will intercept it, check it, and say, yep, it's all good end to end. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. And with that in mind, please, if you have any questions, happy to answer. No takers? Man, I wanted to give a prize to first person who will ask a question, but
I will say, he left the purples all the way down. That's very good.
You win the prize. Yeah. Okay. In such case, thank you. I really appreciate you joining this talk. And pretty much, if you're interested, contact me. My contact information, email, and my personal corporate blog, where I write about engineering, security, a bunch of good stuff. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget welcome reception, drinks and food. Thanks. That's the prize.